Welcome back to another episode of Eric's Camping Adventures. We're going to go on another search today looking for some beautiful places. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Eric's Camping Adventures. We're going to head into the Ouachita National Forest again on this episode. We are going to camp at the Winding Stair campground. It is on the famous Talamina Drive, and we'll have some access to some hiking and maybe some national forest roads to look for some dispersed camping, as well as maybe a little off-roading. Thanks for coming. If you see those mountains on the horizon, we're going to push a little bit further up into those today. On Google Maps, you can see where Cedar Lake is at, and we're just going to travel further south, but up higher into the mountains on this visit. The Winding Stair campground shares the same entrance as does the Emerald Vista that overlooks just that beautiful mountainous view right at the beginning of the video. We arrived at the campground about 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It was pretty empty. There were only a few people there. There was a backpacker and her dog that we met, but it was an empty campground. Probably empty for a reason. It was cold, but it was only in the 50s, but it was cold because it was so humid after the rain, and the wind was blowing, and because of the presence of the humidity, it just seemed to conduct and convect that heat right out of us on the top of that mountain. It felt bitter cold despite the temperature. We picked a campsite with a view. We were hopeful that in the evening and the morning that valley in front of us would be lit up brightly with the sun, and we got set up. When you're dealing with cool temperatures like we are today, you should always set up your shelter, then build a fire, and then consume your meal. Your body will be okay without a little bit of food for a while. You'll be okay for a little bit without a fire, but set up your shelter so you have a place to get in case it starts raining or just gets bitter cold. Deal with your fire and your food after you get your shelter set up. The work of setting up your shelter will generate some body heat, and it did especially today because the temperature and the humidity made everything stick. Everything was a little bit clumsy. Nothing seemed to work right when we were setting up today in the cold, and that does generate some body heat, just being frustrated and setting it up. So we were okay setting up our shelter without a fire first. Part of setting up our shelter today was to finish drilling the holes at the proper height for the ladder with the higher tires and the new setup. It was pretty necessary to get that ladder at a better angle And yeah, that was frustrating too. Nothing seemed to work. It was just a matter of sticking to the discipline of doing things in the right order. And yeah, our frustration kept our body heat up in the wind and cold. Probably the most awkward moment of all was trying to fish the rope of the annex through the channels in the base of the rooftop tent frame. It just took forever. It just bound up constantly, but we finally got it on and we had a place to get out of the wind. We still always bring our camp toilet just in case. The vault toilets are a mess, and yeah, it's nice to have that little more private option in the annex. You can see in the video here that the sun is already below the tree line. We did not get any warmth out of the sun at that angle, and it just stayed humid, cold, and just a little bit breezy on top of that mountain. If it's on the ground in the national forest, it's pretty much yours for the taking. So I'm going to do actually a little cleanup behind this one campsite in the Winding Stair campground. This will be my manly act for the video with an electric chainsaw. So it has been raining in the Ouachita National Forest the last day. We had a real soaker here. In fact, all of Oklahoma got a good rainstorm. And so that means that all the wood that I just cut is wet. So you got a couple options. You got to get to the dry inside of the wood by splitting it apart, or you can be really smart and just bring maybe a couple pieces that are dry and get your fire started. We're going to do a little bit of both. Having a large knife with a really heavy steel blade is a really important tool when you're camping. But being able to baton wood and being able to get to the dry portion of a log that you have cut down is pretty important, especially in this type of a moist, wet setting. On these wet logs, I am splitting them open so that they have one dry surface to catch fire, and that fire will help to dry out the rest of the outside of the log. Always pick up your waste from the splitting of the wood, and if it's wet, just set it around the ring of your fire and let it dry out. It will become a little bit of tinder to pick up that fire later when it starts to die down. I'm going to split open this fat wood here just so it has a little more surface to catch fire, and then we're going to get this thing lit up. It is cold, it is wet. I'm not going to fool around with some matches. I did use a little bit of fat wood that is easy to light, and my propane torch, and we got a fire going pretty quick here. Looks pretty good. I'm going to let some of the wood dry on the inside of the fire ring, and then I'll use that for the fire in a bit, and then I'll move the wet stuff on the outside towards the inside. While I was building the fire, my wife was putting together dinner with some hot sandwiches and some hot soup, and that just hit the spot, and we ate while the fire started to grow. A little hot chocolate in the cold wind is never a bad idea. We let that initial fire burn down to some low coals and warmed up some water for a hot water bottle and stuffed that in our sleeping bags for later. Get them nice and toasty warm by the time we hopped in the sleeping bag later. We woke up to an absolutely beautiful sunny morning, and we knew that was coming from the weather prediction, and pretty excited about it. Today we're going to get out and we're going to follow that little trail right through the trees there, and that is the Talamina Drive, and we're going to find some national forest roads or some county roads that come off of that and see if we can find some dispersed camping. And then later in the day, when it warms up a little more, we're going to do a little bit of hiking. So hang out with us here. Come back for the next episode for driving through those little back roads.